and this is Inside Out West. They're the invisible combatant cells striking in the dead of night. From banks to politicians to construction companies, their targets could be any of us. So who are the West's extreme anarchists?
Fire investigators are waiting to get into the smouldering remains of a brand new police training centre.
The so-called Anarchist Group gave precise details of how they set fire to the building.
Police are investigating a suspected arson attack in Bristol which left 4 cars on fire.
Bristol's Lord Mayor and a city councillor have had their cars torched outside their homes.
There's an extreme form of protest plaguing the West, and its roots are global. The people responsible operate in separate, anonymous cells with no apparent central leadership. They've launched spectacular acts of arson against dozens of businesses they accuse of destroying the environment or enslaving society. The police say some of them could be linked to extreme anarchist groups. So who's behind these attacks, and how seriously should we take them? Anarchists have claimed responsibility for more than 20 crimes across the Bristol area in the last 3 years. They've been blogging about them. A lot of the claims are on this site. But how credible are they? Let's start by looking at something that happened 3 years ago. 2:30 in the morning in Henleys, and the fire brigades alerted to 2 burning cars. 8 minutes later, and another car in the south of the city is reported alight. They belonged to Conservative councillors Kevin Quarterly and Jeff Gollop. Jeff was Bristol's Lord Mayor at the time. The media reported them as suspected arson, but 8 days later this appeared on a website.
This is the fire of the ghetto delivered to their door, and a taste of what the right-wing filth deserve. We can strike you anytime we wish. Class Terror, FAI.
It's a terrifying claim. So chilling that neither councillor wanted to take part in this film for fear of reprisals. A few months later, in April 2012, a fire here at the East Dundry transmitter knocked out 2 local radio stations and affected communication systems for the emergency services. One of the stations was BBC Bristol. A group calling itself the Earth Liberation Front claimed responsibility.
We did this by stuffing 2 tyres with rags and methylated spirit, jamming them in the bundles of wires at the bottom of the mast, and then igniting them.
A month later, rail services in and around Bristol were brought to a standstill following fires in Patchway and Bedminster. Very little detail was reported in the media at the time. But 48 hours later, this appeared on a website. It claims they lifted concrete slabs alongside the tracks and burnt out the signalling cables inside. It's a pretty detailed account, but is it credible? I'm meeting Mike Gallop from Network Rail to find out. So tell me what happened on the morning of May the 22nd.
Well, about 4 o'clock in the morning, one of the train drivers in a passing train noticed a line-side fire. He notified our control office and they mobilised one of our maintenance gangs to investigate. And what they found was the signalling system had been deliberately broken into, some kind of propellant had been put onto it and it had been set fire to. So once the fire had been put out, we weren't able to run any trains for about 12 hours. About 200 trains were affected. So the effect was significant, and obviously it caused wide disruption to the travelling public into Bristol.
The language that they're using here suggests that, you know, they intend to do this sort of thing again. Does that pose a threat to Network Rail?
I don't see it as a threat. What I do see it as is a real safety issue should they choose to go and do it again.
During the next 15 months, anarchists lay claim to more attacks across the city. CCTV operators, a church minibus, a conservative club and police cars are among those targeted. August 2013, this branch of Barclays Bank in the Brislington area of the city is attacked. The only news report is in the Bristol Post, but there's no mention of arson, just that a fire had broken out involving an air conditioning unit. But 4 days later, and this appears on a website.
Candles burned down inside tyres to ignite fuel-soaked rags and around 1,680 grams of camping gas canisters.
It's a very detailed account, but again, is it accurate? We have a copy of the Fire Service's incident report here, which says that the fire was deliberate and that petrol was used. It also says that an explosion was caused by gases and that canisters were involved. It would seem those claiming responsibility are credible. And last summer, anarchists calling themselves the Angry Foxes cell said they set fire to a £16 million police building. Andy Bevin is the investigating officer. Their most outlandish attack so far has been the burning down of the police firearms training centre in Portishead. What can you tell me about your investigation into that?
Numerous lines of inquiry were pursued in relation to that investigation, and that investigation remains open. It is potentially linked to the other attacks as well, and that is a line of inquiry that I'm pursuing in relation to the claims that have been made. But someone out there knows about these attacks, and I urge whoever that is to come forward and provide us with that information.
The police centre was just one of a number of attacks last year. CCTV units and the owners of 4x4s were also targeted. A number of groups have claimed credit for them on the internet. One of them is the Earth Liberation Front. To find out who they are, we need to look across the Atlantic. Leslie Pickering runs a bookshop in Buffalo, New York. In the 1990s, he was the spokesperson for the ELF. He's agreed to talk to me via Skype. What is the ELF? What are its main principles?
It's an underground organization with a set of rules that works to defend the environment against corporations and government agencies that are causing destruction.
And tell me, what sort of people are involved in the ELF in America?
People who care deeply and passionately about the environment and at the same time recognize that the mainstream, quote, legitimate ways to work for social change or environmental justice aren't having the effects that they need to be having.
Does that mean anyone can kind of act in the name of ELF?
Just about anyone. I mean, anyone who holds the beliefs and is willing to take those risks. Now, that's going to narrow down the people quite a bit.
Do you think the crimes that were committed in and around Bristol fit the criteria of ELF?
As far as I could tell, yeah. It certainly looks like Earth Liberation Front activity that's happening out there. Yes.
One of them was was an attack on a commuter line taking commuters into Bristol. Was that a success? The inconvenience to their lives?
Some people were inconvenienced on a train. Am I going to go home and cry about it? No, I'm not. I'm really not. Because I'm way too busy crying about the world being destroyed and about what these banks are doing.
The ELF was once branded by the FBI as the most serious domestic terrorist threat in the US. So what do our police think about this? The Oxford Dictionary defines terrorism as the unofficial or unauthorised use of violence and intimidation in the pursuit of political aims. Is that what we're looking at?
Potentially, yes. But, as I've said, it is a key line of inquiry because someone is linking these attacks and putting posts online. However, I can't discount the fact that it could be a smokescreen for something else.
Are you looking at a terrorist cell?
No. There is quite clear legislation that deals with terrorism. These are acts of criminal damage. Whatever the motive is, clearly I need to establish that. What's being claimed online gives me that line of inquiry.
Over the years, dozens of crimes have been claimed online by anarchists, and this year is no different. They say they firebombed car dealerships, a construction company, a magistrate's court, and even a Royal Marines base. It's one thing to claim something on the internet, but it's another to actually do it. We've established some of the claims are credible. They must have been carried out by the people making them. The police say it might not be terrorism, but the culprits could be part of an extremist group that pose a significant threat. So far, no one has been charged.